John, one final thing we've got an exclusive reveal, and I'll leave it to Sandy to talk about this, because as some of you recognise, this is a Spectrum Next, and we have a certain version, new version. Sandy, take it away.
Literally recorded off my screen with my mobile yesterday. So the Spectrum has its limitations, but not anymore. Hardware sprites and colours and more pixels, and I love it. And I've been writing Z80 assembly language again for the first time in 40 years. I'm going to cry.
Okay, that's absolutely brilliant.
I'm loving it.
It's absolutely brilliant. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to playing the new version of Ant Attack on their Spectrum Nexts. So going back to you, John, and Booty, we've got a little bit of gameplay of Booty. Now, those of you with sensitive ears, not John's proudest.
Sorry about this.
So there we go. I do like the way it transitions from the title screen to the game without the music stopping. But imagine sitting down in your Spectrum on Christmas Day or on your birthday or whatever, you've just been to the shop to get Booty, and you have to play this game for hours and hours and hours. I imagine this tune does start to grind a bit, but very, very fortunately, John, you gave players the ability to turn it off.
Well, I'm grateful for that. I couldn't remember whether there was an option to turn the music off. Apparently there is. It's a long
Is everyone
time.
all right? No PTSD?
Yeah.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to the first talk of Crash Live 2024. I don't know if any of you were here last year. I suspect a lot of you were. You may remember that we had a little test beforehand. We had to test for the colour brown. So fortunately we had a lot of images from a certain computer which helped us with that. So we definitely got the brown right. This year we're all right for the colours actually, but we're going to do a sound test instead. Which I'm going to enlist all your help with as well. So hopefully we can test the sound, and it will be a-okay. So the test is going to work as follows. I'm going to say one of two words, either Spectrum or C64. Okay. Now we've got to test the high pitch and we've got to test the low bass. So whenever I say Spectrum, I want you to cheer and whoop and do anything you like, really, but generally a positive thing. And when I say C64, you've got boo. Okay, everyone got that? Andrew, you got that? Excellent. Right, so here we go. We're going to start the test now. Ready? Spectrum. Yay! C64. Yay! Spectrum. Yay! C64. C64. Yay! Spectrum. Yay! Spectrum. Yay! Spectrum. Yay! Spectrum. C64. That's done. Give yourselves a round of applause. Well done.
I wanted to go Heidi high.
Very good, very good. Right, on to the main topic now. We've tested the audio. Sitting next to me, I'm very proud to have two gentlemen who created, among other games as well, two of the Spectrum's most famous games. So please give it up for Sandy White and John Cain. I'm just going to do a little bit of housework here and a little plug for my book, ZX Dreams, which is on sale in the main room. Both Booty and Ant Attack are in ZX Dreams, so they're excellent games, obviously, very familiar with all of them, and we're going to talk mainly about those two games, but also a little bit about these chaps, their other games as well, and their career, and other little bits and pieces. So, without further ado, we'll get on to it, and the first thing we're going to talk about is your influences, which one is probably quite obvious, and the other one maybe not quite so obvious. So, Sandy, why don't you take us away with your first computer, which is pictured there? I hope.
Which one?
The top one.
Oh, my first computer was an MK14.
I was close.
Oh, sorry.
The MK14, sorry then.
And funny, I never owned a ZX80.
You didn't have an Acorn Atom then?
I did. Is that what? No, that's not an. Oh, it's been painted black. Yeah, the Acorn Atom came after the
Okay, fair enough.
But you said influences. I was thinking about this the other day. What really kicked off my interest in computer games was these early single chip game chips, the AY series. And I had a tank battle game that I'd bought. You know, it was a bare PCB and the chip soldered it up. I keep talking. Am I loud enough? Heidi, hi. No, okay. I always wanted to do that. Weird. What was I saying? I've derailed myself. Yeah, so I built a tank game. It was a single chip tank game, and that's the first time I'd ever really seen a sprite. I hadn't spent much time in arcades, so probably they were around. So that was the thing. I thought, wow, what was that? Because the tank rotated, and you could see that there was a little grid of pixels, and they moved, and that really intrigued me, and I wanted to do it, and wasn't even. There was no way to get into doing that until, I guess, the Acorn Atom came along. So, yeah, will that do?
Yep, that's fair enough. And John, your first computer, I hope I've got this one right, was the ZX80, and you sort of got into computing and games programming from this machine?
Yes, well, I bought a ZX80 when it became available. I think it was in kit form, you had to put it together yourself. It was rather limited in what you could do, because it wouldn't actually display any graphics while it was processing. So it used to, the screen used to just go off when it was doing calculations. So it wasn't an awful lot you could do with it. Of course, I progressed then to the ZX81 and ultimately the Spectrum. But then you buy a Spectrum and you think, well, what are you going to do with it? You know, you write in a few games from magazines and hope they run, and they never did first time. But I just progressed from there.
Yeah, fair enough. And something I meant to mention actually at the beginning here was you two have actually come a very long way to be here today. Sandy from Edinburgh and John from the Isle of Man. So let's talk about that a little bit, John. The Isle of Man, you've lived there all your life. Was there even much of a computing scene, computer shops and so forth on the Isle of Man?
Not really, no. I used to work in an architect's office. We'll probably get onto this later. I used to work with a guy called Kevin Muckton, he worked in the quantity surveying department. I was in the drawing office, and they bought themselves a Commodore PET, and Kevin had more or less exclusive use of it. And he taught himself programming and used to write machine code games on it, sort of lunar lander type things and what have you. Unfortunately, I never got to use it because he monopolised it a lot. And it was a few years later that we actually collaborated and started writing games together on the Spectrum, and he used to write games for the Commodore 64. So that's how that came. Yes, very good.
I still remember.
That's how that came about.
But before we get on to Booty, John, carrying on with you, you worked for for another software house, a company called Rabbit Games or Rabbit Software. So tell us a bit about how you got in touch with them.
Well, that was how I really started writing games which were commercial. I phoned up Rabbit one day and said, look, I've just bought one of your games. Do you realise, before you distribute several thousand copies of it, you realise there's a bug in it? So anyway, I got talking to the guy and said, Rabbit used to sell games that were made in America, I understand, for the Commodore 64. So I said, well, how would it be if I converted some of the games to run on the Spectrum, which had just come out? And they were, very intrigued. So a couple of weeks later, I sent them a copy of Quackers, which was my first published game. It was, well, I hesitate to say, but it was dreadfully written, but it worked, and they were happy enough with it, and they marketed it, and I started writing games for them on a regular basis, mainly doing conversions of games they wanted. I wouldn't say they owned. I did a version. I did a version of Pac-Man, which was more or less the same as the original arcade version. They were a little bit dubious about marketing it because they didn't have the rights. So they said, right, well, can we just change it a little bit? So I added a fishtail to the end of Pac-Man, and they marketed it as Pacacuda, which is pushing the boundaries a bit, but...
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because obviously we've got a few of your games here. Obviously, people might recognise these. Top left is called Escape MCP, which might be based on Tron, I guess. And then the top middle one's obviously obviously a Centipede clone, and you've got a bit of Joust, and you've got Pacacuda, like you say, and a paratrooper type game. The one bottom right, I can't quite get where that one's from, but
that was an original game,
yeah, not with an original title though. And then it's interesting you say that Rabbit were worried about copyright and everything, because then you did this.
Yes, and they wanted a copy of Frogger, which I can't remember how it came about, because to be honest, I never really used to play computer games. They said, right, can you do a version of Frogger? Which I did, and I sent off to them when it was finished. And a couple of days later, the guy I was dealing with sort of phoned me up and said, John, I've just got to the end of the game. Where's the snake? What snake? I didn't know there was a snake. Apparently when you get through various levels, then the game sort of starts again, but there is a snake wanders around, and you've got to avoid that as well. But I'd never seen that, so that was added on afterwards. So, like I say, it's a strange sort of thing if you never bother playing the game all the way through and then doing a conversion of it.
And it's actually quite nice because you've actually added a bit to the game as well. When you finish crossing the road, you've got kind of a maze bit that you have to work your way through before you get to the river. So you've done your best to try and make it a little bit different, but they kind of stymied that with the cover, I think, really.
Well, yeah. No, I was never responsible for the cover artwork.
I don't think there's any lawyers here, hopefully not anyway. If we can move to you then, Sandy, let's talk about your first game, which I believe was Ant Attack, but I've already made a mistake with your first computer, so you might have published something else before that.
It was the wrong colour.
Okay, so tell us about Ant Attack and how that came about, and meeting Angela and sort of the early stage of the Ant Attack.
Well, I mean, it started out with just playing on the Acorn Atom in BASIC, and I suppose, I mean, I was firmly trying to be an artist at that point, probably still at art college, and I was, playing around with BASIC, drawing lines, and I don't know, can't quite remember why I started playing around with cubes, but there was something about the isometric projection in a cube that just appealed. I was studying sculpture, and we're talking about very limited resolution. It was something. It popped out anyway when I had the cube shapes, and then you started stacking them. It became kind of sculptural. That was what appealed to me. And at some point, just by fluke, it started generating cities, just random cubes thrown on top of one another. And that was the start of what became Ant Attack.
Okay, excellent. And John, back to you for Booty. The kind of idea of doing a pirate theme game on the Spectrum. Was that you and Kevin that were doing this?
It was. I don't know who suggested it. I suspect it might have been Rabbit. Well, it was a sort of collaboration between Kevin, myself, and Rabbit, and we came up with the idea for Booty. Well, rather embarrassingly, Kevin and I wrote Booty at the same time. He was writing it for Commodore 64 and I was writing it for Spectrum. And I sort of get most of the credit for it because the Spectrum version sold far more than the Commodore 64. But he did have quite a big input into it. Unfortunately, I lost touch with Kevin a while ago. I did try to look him up a few years ago, when on the island we had an exhibition of achievements by people on the island, and Booty was one of them. I tried to get in touch with Kevin, but I've lost contact with him completely. So it was a collaboration, and we sort of came up with the idea. It was intended to be. It was written for Rabbit. It was intended to be a full-price game. And so we spent quite a bit of time on it, and unfortunately, about the time it was nearly finished, Rabbit sort of went into liquidation, so we were left with this sort of half-finished game, and we had to tout it around and see if we could get rid of it somewhere else and make some money from it. It was sent around various software houses, but at the time, Firebird had just started up, and we sent it to them, and rather reluctantly, because they were looking for budget range games, and it wasn't really intended to be that. It was. We were sort of taking a risk, really, because they wanted to sell it for £2.50 and pay us a modest royalty on that. But we took the risk, and Firebird were happy with it, and they marketed it as part of their first release. Unfortunately, the Spectrum version of Booty was probably one of their better games, and sold very well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was Firebird's first release on the Spectrum, and as you can see from the cover there, they were very brave, putting screenshots on the front cover. That didn't last too long with Spectrum games. But over on talking of the cover, over on Sandy's Ant Attack, we had this lovely cover by David Rowe, which we have some posters of, by the way, just as an aside, that people can purchase after the talk. And this is one of my favourite Spectrum covers of all time. Just incredible piece of perspective work from David. So Sandy, really, my thought is, what do you think of this cover?
Oh, it's gorgeous, isn't it? And I have the poster of an A3 version of it. There's so much detail in it that you don't see in the. I sound like I'm selling them, which I'm not. Well, actually, the reason that we chose Quicksilver as a publisher, having been turned away from Sinclair, was because Quicksilver, I think they innovated the idea of having full colour. It was all sometimes just Xeroxed covers you were seeing, even in W.H. Smith at that time. And there's one standout company, that was Quicksilver, had the full colour. Martin's nodding there. And so, yeah, they really set the trend, and probably, maybe, I'm not sure, but possibly started the trend of having fantastical covers that didn't reflect the contents, Yes.
I think it was them and Imagine, the first form Imagine, that they really sort of instigated that sort of thing. Yeah, definitely. But it's sensible to go for Quicksilver. They were probably the biggest software house and they certainly did a good job with the cover of Ant Attack. I think probably helped it shift a few copies, I'm sure. So going back to you, John, and Booty, we've got a little bit of gameplay of Booty. Now, those of you with sensitive ears, not John's proudest.
Sorry about this.
So there we go. I do like the way it transitions from the title screen to the game without the music stopping. But imagine sitting down in your Spectrum on Christmas Day or on your birthday or whatever, you've just been to the shop to get Booty and you have to play this game for hours and hours and hours. I imagine this tune does start to grind a bit, but very, very fortunately, John, you gave players the ability to turn it off.
Well, I'm grateful for that. I couldn't remember whether there was an option to turn the music off. Apparently there is. It's a long
Is everyone
time.
all right? No PTSD?
Brings back fond memories, I'm sure.
I'm just admiring the way you've dealt with the colour clash.
Oh,
here. It's
you
going
like the
black.
colour clash,
Well,
yeah.
no, it's not clashing. You've made it look like a shadow, which is
No,
great.
it's a clash.
But no, this was a different game because I think a lot of people would have looked at Booty on the. Let's turn that off. A lot of people would have looked at Booty on the cover. With the cover, obviously, you can see a screenshot, and thought to myself, "This is Manic Miner on a pirate ship or something like that." But obviously, you made it a little bit different.
Well, to be honest, I never played Manic Miner. I never played computer games.
Same here. Yeah.
But one of the bigger things in the game, obviously, you've got this puzzle element to it, which I think, certainly I remember when I first played Booty, I was like, what, I've got to pick up this key? And I can't jump over the pirates? What's going on here, you know? And this was something that it made the game a lot more different from similar sort of games, which perhaps might account for why it was so popular.
Well, it was intended to be original. And like I say, not having played many games, the idea of jumping and what have you didn't really occur to us. It was a puzzle, and it was quite original. It wasn't really based on anything, so we thought it was an original game.
Okay, well, we're just going to talk a little bit more about Booty and about a couple of other interesting points about it. But one thing I want to just have a quick chat with you, John, about is its title. Is it the title screen? No, it's not the title screen. It's just like this is the title screen, not the loading screen, is it? Yeah. But this was absolutely lovely. So this greeted you upon loading up Booty, and you've got this lovely view. And if I just hopefully play this video, you can see that lovely shimmer effect, which you put on the Spectrum here. So can you tell us a little bit how you did that?
Well, it
Get rid of that.
was really quite easy. All it is you draw the picture. You find about, I don't know, maybe a dozen bytes which are never used in the picture. You put those on the C, and then just change them all at random. So it just loops around and replaces instances of 255 with instances of 128 or something. So you get this shimmering effect. And it's so relatively easy to do. I don't know why not.
Well, it looks absolutely lovely. Let's have another look. I absolutely love that.
Was that running while it was loading?
No, it used to load and then that would do it.
Yeah, the loading screen was different. Yeah. So then we get onto the game itself, John, and this is the first screen. So you have to collect these keys, and they open a corresponding door which allows you to get to other sections. So I imagine, and don't spoil this for me, I imagine this is meticulously planned out, because otherwise you could get dead ends and so forth.
It was. I think, to be honest, I think Kevin was responsible for doing the layout of each of the screens. So it was all put together quite cleverly. He supplied me with a load of sheets of paper showing each screen and which door went to where and what have you. It was sort of thought out.
I originally wanted to have I was going to ask the audience whether anyone had actually completed Booty, and I was going to have the famous David Beckham be honest meme up on here, but I didn't get round to it. But yeah, has anyone actually ever completed Booty?
Actually, somebody sort of has, because I did find a YouTube video of a walkthrough
Of course,
of it.
yeah. Yeah.
So somebody did do it. Whether they cheated or not, I've no idea. There was a cheat mode in it, but I think when Firebird put the protection on it to prevent copying, I think that's probably overwritten. But it used to be that before you load the program, it never actually used to load the entire memory. It used to keep the last byte free. 65, I don't know, I can't remember now. It was a long time ago. But if that happened to be a 10, then it would enter the cheat mode. So you used to poke 65, 535 or whatever it was with a 10 and then run the program. Yeah, that would be cheat mode, but nobody knows that.
I do now. So I've already mentioned about the inability to jump. So obviously you introduced things that you would need to jump over. The rats that would periodically appear.
Yes, well,
so
you just have to climb up a ladder and avoid them.
But if there was no ladder nearby, then you just had to wait for the rat to nibble your toes, and that was it.
Virtually, yeah.
And then there was no ability to duck either. So you thought you put in a bird that flies along and hits you in the head as well.
Yeah, we are going back some time now. I completely forgotten about that.
Fair enough. And as if that wasn't enough, some of the treasure has got bombs in it as well.
Yes, well, it adds a bit of excitement, but they're always in the same place, so you've got to learn where they are.
Yes, and unfortunately, the collision detection means that if you if you pick up an object to the left, it doesn't register until you get to the right of the object. So if it is a bomb, you haven't really then got time to get out of the way. But like you say, they were at least you didn't make them random.
There are sort of limitations of the spectrum.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So one of the other interesting things about Booty, of course, is that if you loaded the game up while you had a Curra speech unit, you got this instead.
Yes. Strange, isn't it? Well, that came about because Booty was going to be a full-price game. And it was supposed to be in 3 parts. This was supposed to be part 1, whereby you swim through the sea, you collect a goldfish and avoid the other fish and obstacles. You have to come up for air now and again. The sailing ships along the top move along, and if you come up and there's a ship above it, you can't get any air. And that was quite an interesting game in itself. But unfortunately, when we sent it to Firebird, they, like I say, wanted to market it as a budget game, and we said no, we don't need that. We just have the main game, which was fair enough. So all I did was write a little bit of a jump around the first game. I didn't want to start taking it out because it used a lot of common subroutines, so I couldn't go through it and take the code out because it would mess up the main game really. And then the idea was going to be that there would be a third part where Jim, the cabin boy or whatever he is, would be rowing back to the island from the boat in a rowing boat, and various things would happen, but we never got around to programming that. But it would have been, might have been a bit more interesting a game, I don't know.
Yeah, possibly. So at the time you were unaware that users could access this part of the game?
No, I had no idea. I never had a Curra microspeech unit, so I couldn't test it. I was quite surprised that somebody came across it and found it. And why it does that, I've no idea. But,
it didn't take long either. While researching the article that you and I did for Retro Gamer, I noticed that even like 2 or 3 months after Booty came out, people were writing in going, "There's another game in it. There's another game in it." So,
well, another selling point, I suppose. I mean, a little quirk.
Fair enough. If we can move back to you now, Sandy, and back to Ant Attack. We've got the loading screen for Ant Attack.
Is it really going that long?
Wow. Is that Jaws you've influenced there, or is it what's happening there?
Honestly, can't remember. No. Just like John says, the Spectrum has limitations.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, it wasn't best known for its music. So let's talk a little bit more about Ant Attack then. You've obviously already talked about this this technique that you used. I love it how polite you are here as well. Ready when you are. You know, most Spectrum games killed you in the first 20 seconds. This one's like, you take your time. Whenever you're ready, I'm just lying here being attacked by ants.
Yeah, I think that came through my lack of experience of playing games and probably trying to make something that I could enjoy playing. So it had to be slow and easy.
Now, obviously, isometric games became very popular on the Spectrum, but this as one of the first, if not the first. Did you have any idea that you were doing something quite different? I mean, we had a lot of shoot 'em ups and platform games and arcade clones, but this was really something very special for the time.
Yeah, I think because my brother had a Spectrum and played a lot of games, he was my litmus test, and so I think we were aware that it was quite different. But I wasn't so aware of it. It did cause a bit of a stir. I remember being at the launch in the Barbican in London, sort of late 1983, and in front of assembled press. Quicksilver were very good at this publicity stuff, and there was when it went on the screen, there was literally an audible gasp, because that was an abiding memory for me. And at that point I thought, yeah, it is a bit different. That was an interesting experience.
And tell us about this as well, because on the title screen you have the option to play as either a girl or a boy, which obviously is something we kind of take for granted a bit these days, but back then that wasn't really very common.
Well, it probably was at art college, which I was just straight out of. The feminism was, I don't know if it was a new thing then exactly, but it was a hot topic, sort of. So I don't think I could have countenanced, nor would Angela have countenanced not having that. It was easy to do as well, but I think it's because the characters were sexed. It was a boy and a girl, and it just wouldn't have felt right that you could only be the protagonist if you're male. So if the characters had been more androgynous, then it wouldn't have been an issue.
Yeah, fair enough. So we got a bit of gameplay, hopefully, of Ant Attack here, so people can see they are playing as the girl. And I love the animation when she jumps in the air. You get the skirt. So your feminism couldn't extend as far as her wearing trousers or anything.
It's worse than you think, because her boobs are actually going up and down as she walks as well. They're 1 pixel in shape, and I didn't notice till I saw it in full colour on the next.
So this is great. So basically, the game gives you a little primer. So the first time you play it, the person you have to rescue, whether it's a boy, goes right close by, and that gets you to sort of like familiar with the controls and that. And then the next time, are they in the same place each time, or is that randomised?
I think there's 10 levels, something like that, and there's 4 different places on each level. So that's only 4 different hiding places. Again, the Spectrum has its limitations, or the programmers have their limitations.
If I can just interrupt, I mean, Ant Attack was one of my, sort of, I regard as a remarkable game. I'm not just saying that because he's here. But the way, I really must pick his brains to find out how it was done, because the masking of the people behind the blocks. And I only noticed the other day, but it doesn't actually scroll the screen from side to side. It actually scrolls it isometrically or orthographically or whichever it is, which is very unusual. And I really must find out how you did it.
Well, it's plonkingly simple. It just builds the city block on top of block and draws the sprites in order, so they get masked as it goes. And there's some gubbins under the hood, which is not drawing blocks that aren't visible. So it could go. I could make it go a lot faster now, with the benefit of hindsight. But there was so much pain in writing anything and hand assembling that it feels to me like a miracle that it went out in a condition that allowed it to be played to the end, because I didn't give them time to do that myself.
And you get this little reward, don't you? Every time you rescue the boy or girl, take me away from all this, my hero, and then you get to repeat it all over again with the marauding ants. And while we're just on the subject of that, the control method uses, it's rotational. I know you're wincing, aren't you? So, how did this work in your mind? Did you think that was the best way of doing it? Because obviously you were setting a new standard of gameplay here on the Spectrum, and obviously in the latter years the control for isometric games was a bit more direct. Did you consider another method, or was this always the one that made sense for you?
Oh, an idiot! Sorry, you got me really.
Me or you?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't play a lot of games. I don't suppose I had a joystick, a Kempson joystick, at the point where this was being developed, and it doesn't matter how quirky your controls are when you've been using them and you get used to it. I didn't notice that they were shit, basically. And of course now people have told me again and again.
Sorry. I mean, that's the same with a lot. You guys were testing your own games, and that's why a lot of Spectrum games are incredibly tough, because you haven't got someone from outside coming in to play them. It's just you, and you obviously get to play them really well, so you get to learn the controls and so forth. So then when someone new gets the game, they're starting from scratch, basically. So it was a common theme. So yeah, you're not an idiot.
Thank you.
Right, if we can move back to you, John, now, and I want to talk to both of you actually about the reception of both of your games, because if we go on to the Crash review, we are at Crash Live, so it seems appropriate to have a look at the Crash review. And Booty was one of the first Crash smashes before issue 4, I think, which is the issue that Booty appeared in. They had Games of the Month or Game of the Month, but by issue 4 they introduced a Crash smash. And Booty was the first and one of the few budget games to receive a Crash smash. So this must have been nice for you to see, John.
Well, yes. It used to be quite exciting. Every Thursday I'd rush out to meet newsagents and buy various computer magazines, Home Computing Weekly, Crash, a few others, Popular Computing Weekly, looking for reviews of the game you've just released. And I mean, that was absolutely, very surprising, and I'm very grateful for, so thank you, Crash, for that. I'm sure it helped sell quite a few games.
Yeah, definitely. If a game got a Crash smash, especially a budget game, £2.50 that kids could rush out and buy straight away, I imagine it was a great help. And then you didn't get a Crash smash.
What did I get?
You were pretty close. I can't read it from here, but I think it's in the 80s, isn't it? 85. There you go. So you did this revolutionary new system. John just did a platform game. You just did this revolutionary system, and you got 10% less or something.
That's a good spin on it. Yeah, I mean, Ant Attack wasn't mainstream, was it? It had an appeal, but it wasn't. It was never going to hit that level.
Well, it was renowned from that point onwards, I think, that's for sure. And then we're talking about the sales as well. We've got a couple of pictures here. Both, I don't know if it's the same award, because they were both called Gold Cassette Awards, but I don't know if they were run by the same magazines. But you're both receiving here. On the left, obviously, we've got yourself, Sandy, and Angela.
Annie Nightingale.
And Annie Nightingale, yes. I think she passed away earlier this year, but she's obviously a Radio 1 DJ at the time. And then on the right, we've got Kevin and John. And in the middle, there's, rather ironically, I'm sure it's done that way, but there's a lady from FAST, which is the Federation Against Software Theft. And she's wearing a pirate outfit. Now, I'm not sure whether she's being ironic or whether that's because the game that you're holding obviously is Booty, but in any case, it's quite a good snap. So if we can start with you, John, tell us a little bit about this occasion.
Well, yes, I was invited down to London Kevin and I were invited down to London to receive this award. I'm not sure how it came about. I'm quite sure that Firebird initiated it and suggested to, I can't remember which magazine it was, I think it's Home Computing Weekly, suggested to Home Computing Weekly they give us an award for sales of 100,000 or whatever. But like I say, it was interesting times, and it was I've still got my gold cassette. Obviously, I didn't bring it with me because I wanted to show it off. I don't have it on display. It is somewhere in my house, but
Not in the downstairs toilet or anything?
no, nothing like that. Like I say, it's quite a novelty at the time, but I haven't seen it for quite a while.
Okay, fair enough. And Sandy, can you tell us about this meeting with Anne Nightingale?
Don't remember a lot about it. I think I went thinking, I'll get to have a pint with Anne Nightingale or something. But it was all, these things are like sausage factories. It's set up for publicity, and somebody's bribed somebody to get something, and you turn up and you smile and shake hands, and then you're off doing something else. That's about all I remember. I think I was faffing around with a DX7 because this is a long time after Ant Attack.
Yeah, it was a few years on.
So it was. I was thinking, why this now? And I was trying to flog Zombie, and this was an Ant Attack award. So I was probably very grumpy, and Zombie has a MIDI interface if you put a couple of resistors in the back of your Spectrum, and I'd gone to the trouble of bringing a DX7 along, and it wouldn't work because the crystal frequency was slightly different or something odd, and that's why I was thinking, I can't get my MIDI to work, bugger it,
Couldn't Anne help with that?
And I asked, but yeah, she was
Fair enough.
too busy.
Yeah, you don't look in the best of moods, to be honest.
Yeah, I could see that. Probably fighting.
Well, I don't know about in the case of Ant Attack, but certainly for Booty, the occasion was for 100,000 copies. 100,000 copies.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how long after its release we achieved the 100,000, and I've no idea how many it sold altogether. But we're quite pleased with that.
Yeah.
Did you get paid for all those copies?
12.5p a copy.
That's really good going. Yeah.
Yes.
If they paid up.
Yeah.
Excellent. So both games really well received critically, and obviously with the games playing public as well. And then we're running a bit short of time, so let's just have a quick chat about your careers post Booty and post Ant Attack. And we'll start with you, John. You did another game for Firebird called Thunderbirds.
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't great. It was. Firebird got the rights to produce a Thunderbirds game and gave it to Kevin and I to have a go at. It was an interesting game. It was more sort of puzzle and game. It should really have been. It really lacked the sort of urgency of the Thunderbirds missions, if you like. It was reasonably well received, but like I say, it could probably have been done much better. It was a puzzle. The problem with trying to integrate sort of Thunderbird 4 and Thunderbird 1 into a game together and getting you to play with either or both. But anyway, we put it together, and it was more a puzzle than a sort of a really sort of interesting, urgent mission type thing, which it should have been.
Okay, fair enough. And then you did Moonlight Madness, which was a spiritual follow-up to Booty, but it wasn't published by Firebird.
No, unfortunately, Firebird, their management changed. Tony Rainbird, who used to be the CEO of Firebird, left to set up Rainbird Software. The new guy at Firebird, I sent him a copy of Moonlight Madness as a follow-up to Booty, and they basically weren't that interested in marketing it, which was a bit of a disappointment. So I touted around a few software companies, and the only one that would give me a decent advance royalty payment, I think, was Bubblebus. But unfortunately, they insisted on marketing it as a full-price game, probably $7.99 or whatever. And as a result, I don't think anybody's got a copy. It's very similar to Booty. It uses the same sort of levels and lifts and platforms and what have you. But I would say that the music is actually much better. It actually uses polyphonic sound, which is it's good.
Sorry, John, I haven't got that.
Nobody has.
But there is obviously people recognise there's a certain similarity with the main character as well. Looks like a certain cabin boy there, doesn't he? So.
Yes, I think so. It was. I think the basic scenario was that this was a professor's house, and he suffered a heart attack, but his heart pills were in that safe behind Jim the cabin boy, and he has to find the combination. And I can't remember how it was done, but you had to go through the levels and find the combination to the safe, open the safe, and save the professor.
Okay.
And meanwhile, there were pirates. The pirates have been replaced by maids and butlers and things, and there were a few other quite a few other changes, and I think the graphics were better, to be honest.
Looks like Jeremy Clarkson down the bottom, but anyway, we'll move on. And then you did Marble Madness for Melbourne House, so another software house. Were you determined to only do games with madness in the title from now?
No, Marble Madness was. I was asked to do a version of it. It was a clone of some, I think it was an Atari game or something. Unfortunately, it was, to an extent, the idea of it was sort of inspired a bit by Ant Attack, and it was a sort of 3D type game. I did actually write quite a bit of code which actually used 3D graphics, which were truly 3D, but unfortunately it ran so slowly it was just unworkable. So it was virtually rewritten as something that looks like 3D, but it's not. It's all 2D. And even then, the marble doesn't run very smoothly, and it runs rather slow. And well, it was marketed. It was published.
Okay, thanks, John. And if we can move just to you, Sandy, quickly now, just talking about your next two games. Oh, you've already mentioned Zombie. Was it Zombie or Zombie? I think it was Zombie.
I don't know why Zombie.
You named it twice.
Yeah, it's all good.
And you did that, which obviously people will recognise as very similar to Ant Attack, and also Eye of the Mask. So if you can just tell us briefly about these games.
Well, I suppose Zombie was using the same engine, but with the addition of colour. And I was very unhappy with it when it went out. Thankfully, since then, 20 years later, people have said actually we enjoyed playing it, and that's been good to hear. But it was rushed, and I suppose, yeah.
Okay. And Eye of the Mask, which is very impressive. I haven't got any video of that, unfortunately, but anyone that's played it will know that this sort of environment rotates very quickly and moves very quickly.
Yeah, so this was just me being really excited about how can you push the spectrum, technically, and but not enough gameplay, I think, to make it a good game. Sadly, just under-resourced and bitten off more than I could chew.
The spectrum had its limitations.
Yeah.
Well, you got a lot out of it for Eye of the Mask, that's for sure. Just a couple more things to round up now, because we're reaching the end of our time. Firstly, I've always been curious. John F. Cain, it's like you're an ex-president or something, but well, what does the F stand for anything? Is that your middle name? What does it stand?
The F stands for Francis. I was named, my middle name came from my auntie Francis, who I think had quite a bit of money, and I think my parents' idea was that if they named me Francis, then they might leave us something. I don't think she ever did, but the F I always used because my parents were obviously a bit unimaginative. My dad's name was John, so when they had their first child and it was a boy, I said, well, what were we going to name him? Oh, we'll name him John. So I always used the F just to differentiate on the post and what have you.
I remember playing booty a lot, and when I got done by one of those rats or one of those bombs, the F stood for something else.
Curiously, about 10 years after I wrote Booty, I went on an MX5 owners club trip to Germany, and I bumped into a guy, and he said, John F. Cain, did you write Booty? And I sort of looked at him and thought, how the hell do you know that?
It was the F that done it.
It's John F. Cain. He said, just stuck in my mind.
Okay, thank you, John. One final thing we've got an exclusive reveal, and I'll leave it to Sandy to talk about this, because as some of you recognise, this is a Spectrum Next, and we have a certain new version. Sandy, take it away.
Literally recorded off my screen with my mobile yesterday. So the Spectrum has its limitations, but not anymore. Hardware sprites and colours and more pixels, and I love it. And I've been writing Z80 assembly language again for the first time in 40 years. I'm going to cry.
Okay, that's absolutely brilliant.
I'm loving it.
It's absolutely brilliant. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to playing the new version of Ant Attack on their Spectrum Nexts. So anyway, that just about wraps this up. Thank you so much, John Cain and Sandy White. As I mentioned earlier, Chris now has some lovely posters of these two games for you guys to purchase, and these two chaps will sign them as well. So please come up and buy them if you want and give them.
How are you doing, you alright? How are you? Can we hold you together? Yeah, it's coming together. Paul Hamilton's on his way down, he's trained for fight.
The F looks great in my signature.